Hello everyone and welcome to the On Fire Tech Trailblazers podcast. We're taking a slightly different turn today. Normally we speak with judges, although to be advised with regards to this, for the judges on fire and the founders on fire video and podcast. So I'm delighted to welcome somebody that we've known for a long time and has always been very, very supportive of what we're doing here at the Tech Trailblazers. But we may have news that he may be getting slightly more involved. It's Gerald Brady who's joining us from Silicon Valley Bank. Hello, Gerald. How are you?
Rose, hi, great to see you. Happy afternoon to you.
Yeah,
Good
happy morning
anyone in the US.
Happy morning to you. So obviously we're still working from home, unless the Silicon Valley Bank offices have changed a little bit since the last time we met.
Still at home.
Very good, very good. So obviously one of the things that we'd like to do, or I'd like to do with you, is just to find out a little bit more about yourself, and then talk a little bit about Silicon Valley Bank. And obviously most people, I would imagine, who are listening to this, if they're familiar with the tech startup world, will be familiar with Silicon Valley Bank. But I always think it's nice to get a little bit of an update and perhaps an internal perspective from your viewpoint, because you've been there for a little while. So if you'd like to tell us a little bit about, who you are, where you come from, and what you're doing there at Silicon Valley Bank.
Sure. So I think my career kind of falls bluntly into kind of three quite distinct buckets, but all within technology, but within different parts of the technology ecosystem. So I started in sales in the tech world and then joined a startup called Yahoo in '96, which was really my first experience of actually moving into the startup world. And that was a great exposure. And obviously being part of Yahoo in '96 was a great experience and really seeing the inside of a high growth company. And then I joined 3i, and that was the shift into venture. And so I'd come out of business school. I went to Cranfield and joined 3i out of business school. And that was really an incredible learning experience, and really the 3i model of learning by doing and that exposure to all the startups that you could see. And of course, at that point, there was no specialization in the UK. You were just doing tech deals and whatever came across your desk. And at that point, 3i and Apax were the dominant investors in the UK and Europe. And then I was very fortunate in 2000, they sort of asked me if I'd like to move to the US as part of the office opening in San Francisco, and they had an office in Boston as well. And so we made the move in the peak of the market to San Francisco. So we saw the boom and bust pretty quickly. And what was really interesting about that was, again, recognizing you're within a startup inside a corporate in a new market, and also really in the heart of Silicon Valley. And so suddenly there was a lot of learnings we can touch on there of just doing that experience. And then in '03, I left and went to Siemens, and I ran the early stage venture group for Siemens in the States. And again, now another step inside a mammoth corporate with, at the time, 400,000 staff. And then in late 2009, I joined Silicon Valley Bank, who I'd known from my both 3i and Siemens days. And the bank has just been an incredible experience in terms of funding the innovation economy, our own growth. I mean, we're continuing as a 40-year-old company almost to grow like a startup at the moment. And so we've had an incredible experience. We've gone into more industry sectors, we've added geographies, we've added products. So we've been a real growth story as a 40-year-old business. And that's been fantastic. So we're very fortunate. We're a full bank, as you know, in the UK, Rose, and then operating in other countries in Europe and Israel, and we're a full bank in China as well. And today we're banking about half of all venture-backed companies in the States and about 70% of VC firms. And so we've a good finger on the pulse of what we think is happening in the innovation economy.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you do some good reports in that sort of sector as well, looking at the trends that are coming on. And I'm going to grill you on some of the things that you're seeing coming through. So yeah, you talked a little bit about Silicon Valley Bank, so what can you kind of explain, because you've got an interesting role within the bank as well, haven't you?
I have, yeah, and over the years I've held a variety of different roles. So for the last 5 years I've been building our CXO community. So focusing really on the CIO, CTO, Chief Security Officer, and that network, and how we really help connect both the venture community and our clients to prospective buyers, and really that connective tissue between startup world and corporate world. And you understand this, Rose, you know, sometimes it's two companies speaking, or two organizations or two individuals speaking a foreign language. Yeah, how do you sell as a startup to a large corporate? How do you as a large corporate work effectively with a startup? And just trying to help each other understand the way that they interact, which doesn't sound hard, but can be pretty challenging. And again, you know, just even scale, recognizing that, you know, a startup can make a decision like that, and a big company isn't going to move that fast. They have processes and procedures, and they have whether it's kind of regulatory scrutiny, et cetera, to go through, compliance, et cetera. So we're really helping that bridge. But what's interesting is that the big companies recognize increasingly they need help, and often the big technology suppliers that they've worked with for years just aren't going to be able to help them with some of the modern technology solutions they're looking for. So it's been a great experience. It's been great fun building that community with the bank. And we're doing that with many of our venture friends as well.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting challenge. It's something that I've been banging on about, for boring everybody with my view on the importance of not just the VC as a source of funding, but actually one of your biggest investors is your customers. So particularly if you've got large ones as well. So yeah, so that's very exciting. And yeah, I'll look forward to hearing more about what's happening there. So you really do have your finger on the pulse of both the VC side of things and also what's happening for enterprise technology decision makers, which is super important for you know, the startups that we're talking to. So from that perspective, you know, we talked a little bit last year about some of the trends that you were seeing, and obviously AI, machine learning were some of the things that you picked up on as being, you know, very important, and was very much borne out when we look at the submissions to our AI category. The AI Trailblazers, you know, has gone up the leaderboard considerably and is now sort of nibbling at the heels of security and cloud. But we're also seeing that there's a lot of AI in all of those other categories as well, and the role that that's playing in that. So, you know, it's all become a little bit more of a fusion where AI is kind of pervading into all aspects of that.
Yeah.
So aside from that, I mean, what do you see as being interesting as you know, what's the burning sort of challenges that you are seeing within your CIO and CXO community that you're chatting with?
Yeah, and we can riff on this as much as you want, Rose. I think one of the things that's kind of interesting is, you know, the pre-COVID conversation and where we are today. Yeah. And I think, you know, you've probably seen the cartoon of, you know, what drove your digital transformation? Was it the CIO or COVID? And I think for a lot of large organizations, COVID's really been the accelerator. It's really forced a lot of change in terms of both technology adoption, the speed of technology adoption, but also, and this is where I think we've seen a lot of shift around a remote workforce. We've all, whether we like it or not, lived on Zoom for the last 15 months. We've all worked from home. You know, certainly for me, since March last year. I've visited the office once in just over a year. And not sure when I'll next go back into the office. So, and I think that what that has done is it's driven the adoption of things like collaboration tools. We were very fortunate as an organization. We'd moved to Microsoft Teams the year before, but I think for a lot of companies, the first thing they were focused on, other than employee safety, was what tools have we got that we need in place? So whether it was video conferencing system, collaboration tools, remote collaboration tools, even things like, Wi-Fi for employees, have the employees got the right infrastructure at home? Have they got the right Wi-Fi set up at home? And then all of the ancillary things that come with that, Rose. What security vulnerabilities have we now got, because we've got a different attack vector now? Everyone's at home, the vulnerability of the laptop at home, etc. So I think we have seen, first and foremost, an enormous boom in enterprise software. And if you look at what happened in the venture industry, really from March last year, and this is pretty much true around the world, when COVID hit and we all went into lockdown in Europe and the US, we all assumed this could be a pretty bad scenario for everything. And in reality, the venture deals slowed for about 6 or 8 weeks, no more than that. And then people started seeing many corporates are still spending. They're having to invest in technology. Their laptop sales were just staggering. There's one company we talked to who said they had 50,000 people around the world in call centers. And they said they had to, so everyone would come into an office with a desktop PC for call centers, and said we had to order 50,000 laptops and get them installed in people's homes as within a week. And so you've seen this massive surge of technology sales. Laptop sales were through the roof last year. So it's been quite a staggering year to see some of the growth in enterprises. And that's not to say it's been great for everyone. And I recognize that, it's clearly been an incredibly challenging year for everyone. And maybe off topic for a second, Rose, but I do think the one other thing that I've heard CIOs and CTOs and senior corporate executives talk about more than anything has been employee welfare and mental health through this. And I think they've recognized that first and foremost, are the employees okay? Are they really doing okay? And so you've started to see more companies employ tools like Calm and other mental health tools. I think there's much more check-ins going on through emails and companies just saying, okay, you're remote. Are you okay? Are your family okay? And I think that, the work-life balance conversation has been, well, am I working from home or living at work? And I think that's been, interesting for companies, because we've all gone through it. This is not discriminated across the workforce. Not everyone in every position has really had a good time through this. So again, just kind of trying to make sure, employees are okay. So you've seen the CIOs and CTOs get involved in tools and applications like Calm, etc., in the workforce, which you wouldn't normally see a CIO say, hey, we need to be looking at these tools, but they really have been doing that now.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, I use Headspace personally, but obviously the same ilk. And yes, and I think it is a really important. In fact, we've just had, I think it was last week, Mental Health Week. I think it's really important, and I think that's interesting, because I think it's also very prevalent in the startup community as well, because they are very kind of adrenaline, sort of living on Red Bull type of scenarios where it's a very, very fast pace, and one of the reasons they can maintain it is because they have that team element. When you remove that team element, then you kind of in a sort of a weird sort of like the legs are still spinning around, and suddenly you realize that, where's everybody else, what's going on? And being disconnected when you're trying to put so much effort into something is kind of pretty interesting. And I think, you know, having spoken to a lot of people, you know, everybody's had good times, everybody's had bad times. And, you know, if you are part of a team, then hopefully you balance one another out. And I
Yeah,
think this takes us on to an interesting part of another conversation we were having before we pressed record, or I pressed record, was around the whole diversity element and diversity of teams. And so I don't know, is that a good segue, or would you like to say a little bit more on the
sure. No, I mean, I think it's a great segue. And yeah, I live in the US, Rose, and so, you know, there's just no denying the impact of Black Lives Matter in the US last year, and the tragic events, I think, really affected a lot of people here, and I think it's really propelled, accelerated the conversations inside organizations with friends about just the disparity of growing up if you're of another color other than me as a white middle-aged guy in America. And I think that's really interesting. And I also think, particularly, you know, in the last few months here, we've also not just seen the rise in Black Lives Matter, but also I'm really shocked to see it, but the Asian hate crimes in America, and that's been a shock for many people to see that and experience that. So I do think that these conversations and awareness have mattered way more than ever before, and I think we're certainly talking about it as an organization. I think that the funds are talking about it. I think there's a much more concerted effort about saying, you know, we as corporates have a role in this. We stand by our colleagues. We talk about allyship, but it's also, what do we do other than talk about this? How do we change the conversation? How do we encourage more diverse founders? And when I talk about diversity, it's all aspects of diversity. You know, it's gender, it's sexual orientation, it's skin color, it's every neurodiversity, you know, we've talked about, because you know, we've got to represent the whole world. It's not just me. That we need to be both funding and supporting. And it's also not just the entrepreneurs, but it's also the investors need to also be representative. You know, and I'm talking to you as a woman, Rose, but I think there's less than 3% of investors are females still. Women still raise a very small percentage of venture funding. And again, there's plenty of stories here, but where female executives pitch an all-male audience about a product, often it's like, well, of course you're not going to understand it. You're not my audience. So I do think that we're starting to see, well, we're clearly seeing much more focus in terms of the funds themselves diversifying their investors. I think the LPs, the limited partners in funds, are also expecting and demanding more diversity and putting money into more diverse funds and targeting those funds. And you're seeing that come from pension funds, you're seeing that come from corporates who are both investing in those communities and saying, hey, we've got a mandate to support diversity, inclusion, and equity in the community as well. So I do think we're starting to see some real change. And I do think that this is a conversation, certainly I know it's happening in the UK and Europe as well. It's not just here. So I do think, as hard as it is, I think it is, the conversations are real. And I do think that we are starting to see some real change. It's always frustratingly slow. These things take time. It takes time to raise money. It takes time to deploy money. But I do think we are starting to see some progress.
Good. And I think it's interesting you talk about the impact of Black Lives Matter in the States in particular. Obviously, there's been, you know, huge impact over here as well, thankfully. But I think that it's actually troubled people more because in reality, our lives were so focused on the news and social media, not on going out for, you know, with your friends for a restaurant and finding out, you know, how their job's going and because this is the type of topic which, there's been like an absolute, waves and waves and waves of it, and it has, quite rightly, you couldn't escape it in the way that you could when you had a normal life, because it's been so present through the news, and obviously people, seeing the reactions and the powerful, both positive and also negative elements of that. So I think it's been really kind of like put under a microscope due to COVID. I wonder whether, if, I know, obviously I think it would have had a huge impact, but I wonder if the impact would have been so huge if we'd have all been just trottling about our normal, day-to-day business. So I think it's accelerated that. So it's not just digital transformation we're looking at cultural, societal transformation, which has been to a degree accelerated.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. No, I think that's very fair, and I do think that we're in a much more connected world, and particularly when we're none of us are really going out very much, or at least up until a few weeks or months ago that was the case. And I do think that it was impossible to ignore the stories here. It was you couldn't ignore it, and sadly, it wasn't one isolated event. We just had a series of tragic deaths here. And I think that's, again, sadly, we continue to see incidents here as well. So we know that is continuing to be an issue. I'm an optimist by nature. I'm optimistic that this is as painful as it is. Change is coming, and it is never easy, but I do think we are starting to see change, and I think the first part of that is having the conversation, and I do think that there is just more openness and willingness to do it, as hard as it is.
And if you're seeing in both the the investment community, the startup community, not statistically, but research wise, we've always been, for a good number of years, there's been sort of very firm evidence that more diverse teams produce better companies, better products,
Absolutely.
better working environments, better, there's a reason why we're all different, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what's needed, are different skills in different areas. And if we kind of cookie cutter just the same type of person again and again and again,
what a boring world we'd be in, Rose, if we we're all like me. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I'd be more than happy to see a few more Geralds running around. But I mean, it is enjoyable to spend time with people from different backgrounds who have had different experiences.
And if you're a global company, you're selling to a diverse world. So, I mean, if you're not representative of your customer base, you're already narrowing your opportunity as well. And I do think, again, maybe tying this back into technology, there's a lot of debate, for example, of, if you've got software that's developed by an all-male, all-white developer base, do you see bias being put into AI, for example? So some of these kind of conversations are actually, well, are you capturing, diversity in software development? So I do think that this is something that is a real conversation.
Well, I hope we can do a little bit better than the automotive industry, who still have seatbelts that strangle me. Because, do you know what I mean? And there are just so many elements that things are designed for the customer, the end user, to be a particular way. And if that end user is not the same as the person who developed it, how do they really understand what is required? So yes, I think there's a definitely a very powerful element for that, and I think that takes us actually into, I think we're doing very well with the segues. I haven't even set any of these ones up with you, Gerald. We're obviously a natural pair. We'll have to start a radio show. From that point of view, if we look forward, because I mean, it's been a very, very challenging, yet, you know, out of that there have been, you know, like they say, you burn down the forest and the new shoots grow. I'd rather they didn't have to do it in quite such a dramatic way, but we have what we have. And sort of moving forward, if we look, you know, once we've hopefully, you know, we're starting to see the shoots and we're starting to see the forest grow again and life, you know, never back to normal, but shall we say, have the elements of normality that we want to get back to, and perhaps keep some of the things which we didn't have before. What do you think technology is going to look like? What's enterprise tech going to look like, say, in 10 years' time?
Wow. I mean, it's so interesting. Well, I mean, if you think about, you know, technology in 10 years, I mean, it's pretty incredible. You know, we wouldn't be doing this 10 years ago. You know, the iPhone's 12 years old, you know, so I mean, I think we've kind of got it in some ways very hard to predict. You know, historians will say it's really easy to look back, it's super hard to look forwards, and predicting the future, if I was really good at it, I'd be running a hedge fund. But I think it's I mean, I think some things will be obvious. I think we'll see more HD quality on products. I think we'll see, I do actually think that as a society we'll see more hybrid working. That work-life balance between home and work, and the pros and cons about that. I think we all crave the human connection, and I don't think that goes, but I think the way we work will probably be different. Where we work is certainly changing. I think the view that, you know, if you're in London and your office is in London, that's where you have to be. And I think people are like, well, you know, I don't really have to do that. So I think you'll see more flexibility around the workforce. It's inevitable that security is going to continue to be a major focus within enterprises. I think a lot of companies are, and this is a kind of conversation I had with a few companies recently, and some in the UK, which is, you know, if you're coming from, let's say, a traditional retail world, or you've got that particular brand experience where you're known for customer service, how do you take that and translate that into an amazing digital experience? And I think that's something that clearly is hard to translate, but the hard problems are what's also the opportunity for people to think about that. I think, again, hard to predict in terms of human behavior, what will happen, but certainly my expectation is in at least the next couple of years, you are going to see the world really want to be out with each other, whether it's traveling, bars, restaurants, social life again, because we've all been held captive inside our four walls. So I think you're going to see maybe the roaring 20s is the phrase a lot of people are talking about. So potentially we are actually in for a super cycle. And also, even in the UK or the US, you've also had massive consumer savings. You know, most people haven't bought clothes. Now, car sales, on the other hand, booming, except for chips. So, you know, it's, again, hard to predict some of the societal impact of this. But I do think that if you think about some of the interfaces, I mean, as much as we kind of hate Zoom, for example, you know, it is interesting to kind of think about, you know, what that kind of video interface might be like for us in the coming few years. And I think that interactivity will continue to evolve and change. And as you think about, you know, the knowledge, integrating AI into some of this, again, I think that's going to be pretty interesting. I think we are two trends I'd talk about, Rose. I think we are really just at the start, the American term, the first base of really seeing the impact of AI. And I view this and again, if I take my optimistic nature, I don't think this is something that's going to destroy jobs. I think it's going to make work more meaningful for people. There's a lot of boring repetitiveness in jobs, lots of data entry, and actually the AI tools helping people focus less on that, being able to automate some of that, and actually get them to focus on more meaningful work. That's a positive. So I do think that AI will potentially actually make work more enjoyable for people. I worry less. I'm old enough, Rose, to remember that people were panicking about the PC revolution 40 years ago. Turned out that didn't destroy jobs. It just changed jobs. So I'm pretty confident that we'll continue to see that evolve. I think how we all consume information is also shifting. You know, my son's about to go to college. You've got a son that's, you know, that age as well. Certainly in the next 3 to 5 years, I doubt he's going to buy a TV anytime soon. His news is all on this. The way we consume information, you know, is clearly changing, but also it's our entertainment ecosystem as well. So I think it's pretty hard outside of AI to say what else is coming. AI for sure. The other one I'll throw out there, Rose, which I think could be a real game changer, is I do think we will see real quantum computers in use in the next 5 years. And I think that there's a lot of people who are saying, oh, you know, it's been the year of quantum computers for 30 years and they've never come. But I actually think that we are on the cusp of real quantum technology coming to us. And I think what that can do in terms of just processing capabilities and the impact that has in terms of speed of transaction, whether it's, you know, content, trading, massive amounts of data being processed, you know, the ability to do this in high def, etc. I think we will see a massive shift, and that's where, you know, the UK is out of Cambridge, for example. You know, there's some amazing things happening in the UK. The UK is in a really strong position in quantum. The government's got a quantum fund now. So I do think there's some really interesting things. And in 10 years, I do think that we won't be talking about if, it will be real.
Well, yeah, certainly a very exciting time from that perspective. And in that sort of view, what do you think the startups are going to look like? Because we've undoubtedly seen some shifts in their world based on some of the conversations we've been having, both, you know, in the podcast, right, the, you know, the video interviews, and just generally speaking, what we're hearing from our tech trailblazers, you know, both the recent ones and the, you know, the ones that have been around in the tech trailblazers community for a bit longer. But certainly things like, you know, fundraising, remote teams, you know, the requirement for a physical office in the same way as it was before, they all seem to be changing. But I'm sure that you've seen other stuff as well. So, you know, bearing in mind, you know, where have they got to now, and where do you think that might then take them if we've sort of started this sort of shift of, you know, what the expectations are versus what the reality can be?
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. So firstly, I think what COVID has taught us is that there was a belief, I think, for a lot of people that unless you're in the office, you're not productive. And I think that perception, particularly in corporate America and other large corporates, that's gone. Productivity did not go down at all. So I think that for a lot of people, that is a change. I also think that where talent is matters way less than ever before. So I do think we're kind of seeing that flattening of organizations, and I do think we'll see investors care way less particularly as we look out over the next 5 or 10 years, there used to be this view of, if I can't drive to the company, I'm not going to invest in it. You know, it was one of those things, even in the UK, it was like, well, if you're in Cambridge, I really need you to be in London. Or if you're in Oxford, I really need you to be here because I want to be close to you. And that was only 30 or 40 miles that we were talking about. And I think that's gone. I really think that's gone. Now, it doesn't mean that relationships don't matter. They absolutely matter. But I do think that the view that geography is the determining factor on where companies are, that's gone. I think we're also going to see much more distributed workforce. And rather than say, hey, you know, talent needs to come to me, I think companies will say, let's go to where the talent is. And I don't care where the talent is anymore. And particularly in hard technology skill areas where there's maybe real gaps of, you know, there's maybe 10 or 20 or 30 people in the world that have these skills. I think companies have already accepted that. It's like, look, I don't care if you want to stay in Wyoming or you want to work in the Hebrides, I don't care. As long as you've got a broadband connection, I'm fine with that. And I think that the reality is we've all seen employees, certainly here, you know, move to different parts of the country, be comfortable working across time zones and geographies, and I think that's changed. Now, what that doesn't mean is that, you know, culture doesn't matter. It absolutely matters. And we do need to kind of continue to focus on building that corporate culture and startup culture. But how we do that will be slightly different for sure. And also, I suspect the reality is that we still need to come together. It just might not be 5 days a week, every week of a month. And I think we'll probably see much more hybrid working. It's also, and you know, if you look at people like GitLab, for example, which has been remote from day one, and really one of the pioneers of all remote, what they will say is, it doesn't save money because we spend money getting people together to build cohesion and relationships. And so I do think it's, you know, the driver isn't necessarily say, hey, you know, we don't have our office expenditure anymore, because we still have to get people together to build that. And right now, as of today, I would say nothing replaces relationships like in person.
Yeah.
It's just way harder to do that over a screen. You know, I'm looking at you now, Rose, and I'm kind of getting the, you know, I can see you perfectly, but the jitter and buffer, it's still there. And I think particularly, I mean, you and I are on this. If I've got 20 faces on a screen, Rose, it's way harder to read an individual face on that. So I think that, you know, we'll still want to be together. We are naturally as humans, you know, a social species, and so we want to have that connectivity. I think that's really important. I hope, I think, I believe we will see much greater diversity in both the investors and the founders in these companies. I also think that over the course of the next decade, for sure, that entrepreneurship is something that I think is going to become much more of a curriculum conversation in schools and college, because the reality is that most people don't end up working in large companies. They often work in small companies, they're self-employed, etc. And, you know, if you're an architect, how do you become entrepreneurial? If you're a fashion student, how do you become entrepreneurial? You're not, those are small companies at the end of the day. So I think we have to kind of encourage that. And for economies to thrive, you need a thriving economic base of entrepreneurs to do that. So I think seeing support for entrepreneurship matters. And then tying it one step back, I also think that, you know, it's incumbent upon all of us, whether it's, you know, government, companies, society, to encourage STEM. You know, I think it's really going to be very hard for cities, countries, communities to have a thriving economy if they don't have a thriving STEM base in school. And so again, making sure that, we're not leaving kids behind, we're not under investing in STEM in schools, making sure that, everyone's got access to that opportunity. And I think that'll be a really big focus for us over the next decade as well.
And hopefully we can all be part of that conversation as well, because I know the tech industry there's always a skills gap, because skills keep changing, and you lose people for whatever reasons, and then you've already got a deficit, and then you've got to kind of bring everybody along. So it is an ongoing challenge, and I don't think we're ever going to say, hey, yeah, we've got rid of the skills gap, because oh look, there's another one. There's another one.
Skills are constantly evolving and changing as well. And I think that's, again, we're off topic here, Rose, but I think that the schools I see today are really trying to develop lifelong learners. I think companies are looking at the workforce of the future and saying, we need you to be adaptable, we need you to be lifelong learners. The skills you get in college, what programming skills you have today, they're going to be redundant. Now, the language you're trained in might not exist, but the ability to learn that next language or next technique, you need that ability. You need to encourage that. So I do think there'll be a much greater focus on lifelong learning for that.
Yeah, well, I think it's part of the joy of being in the tech business, because you do have to keep learning, because there's always something new. It may be based on some of the stuff that you understand and you have a bit of a foundation in it, but it's still a new element, and that's what makes it exciting. And I think that's one of the reasons why we both enjoy this industry so much.
Absolutely.
So
no, it's absolutely enthralling to see the impact of technology, and look, there's clearly some societal issues that come out of this as well, but I do think that our world is better for it. And again, we're focused really just on the technology side, but if you look at the impact of technology in healthcare, or the impact of technology on cars, or the impact of technology on energy, I do think that we're seeing an incredible amount of change across all our lives in every aspect of that as well.
And I think that's one of the things about diversity, is that the fact that tech is in every part of our lives. So you don't have to necessarily be tech first. You could be energy or ecologically first, but there'll be a technology element of it. I mean, we were talking to some people who were coming up with wave energy, and how that was impacted and how they were making a difference in it. But that's okay, it might not all be tech in our world, but it's certainly engineering, and there's certainly lots of elements about those aspects of and all of those readings would be being analysed by technology. So it could be all very well having the nuts and bolts, but you also need to understand the stresses and the strains that they were being put under, and what's the optimum structure, and all of those different elements. So regardless, whatever your passion is, whether it's fashion, architecture, build not just buildings, but society itself, the impact of social media, of all of these other things. So we talked about lots of elements here, about the investment community, about obviously the impact of COVID, and diversity, and how important that is. So prior to us recording this, we also had a conversation about some stuff that we're doing on the Tech Trailblazers, which is a little bit new. We like to try and bring in what we feel are relevant categories that may resonate in the marketplace, and obviously have some benefit, and hopefully spotlight some interesting things that are happening in our amazing ecosystem. And two things that are actually very close to you. So the Diversity Trailblazer, which we're looking at how the industry is pushing forward the diversity, equality, and inclusion element. And I was talking with Joe Bagley about that, as he likes to put his analogies about going to a dance, being invited, being made to feel welcome, and then actually sort of feeling like you can actually get involved and have a good jive. So and also investment trailblazers, so looking at what's changing and what's innovative in the investment space. And I think those two probably sit very closely together and obviously very close to your heart. So I'm very pleased to give ourselves our own exclusive, which is that you're coming on board as one of our judges to look at those two areas with us and for us.
Yeah, I'm delighted to. I mean, I think these are really important categories, you know, particularly I think as we've been chatting about, you know, the advent of Black Lives Matter, and I think that's really important. But I also think that you've got to take a stand, and I think, you know, advocating for more diverse founders, more diverse investors, that's super important. So I'm delighted to be involved and help support some of the things that you're doing, Rose.
Fantastic. Well, we're delighted to have you on board. And I think that gives us a fantastic wrap up as well. Always good to end on a high after the year that we've had. We certainly need to be focusing on the positives, and it's always positive to chat with you, Gerald. It's always a pleasure. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, brilliant. And thank you everybody for listening and watching. And if you'd like to find out more about the Tech Trailblazers, please visit us at techtrailblazers.com. Follow us on Twitter at Tech Trailblaze, no R, no S, or find us on LinkedIn. Thank you very much. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye now.